The air outside the Blackstone mansion buzzed with the quiet hum of luxury. A line of black-tinted limousines glided up the circular driveway, their passengers stepping out in tailored gowns and designer tuxedos. Cameras flashed. Waiters in crisp uniforms whisked champagne flutes to eager hands. It was Manhattan's event of the season, the Hartwell Gala. Every politician, every billionaire, every power player who wanted to be seen was here, and so was Camilla Williams. She adjusted the navy blue silk dress that clung elegantly to her frame as she walked toward the glowing marble steps. Her heels clicked against a stone, steady and unhurried. She carried herself with the quiet grace of a woman who belonged here. But before she could even give her name, a security guard in a stiff black suit stepped in front of her. "Service and trance is that way," he said, pointing behind the mansion. His tone was dismissive, flat, almost rehearsed. He didn't even bother looking at the guest list. Camilla paused. She could feel the stares of two socialites lingering on her, their expressions a mix of confusion and condescension. She gave the guard a polite smile. "Actually," she said evenly, "I should be on the main guest list." The guard let out a short, mocking laugh. "Yeah, they all say that. Kitchen's in the back, sweetheart." For a moment, Camilla considered pressing further. But then she remembered something her wife, Alexander, had whispered to her that very morning. Sometimes people show their true selves when they think no one important is watching. So, instead of arguing, she tilted her head slightly, smiled again, and walked to the side entrance. Inside, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers. A sea of pearls, diamonds, and hand-tailored suits shimmered beneath the golden light. Waiters floated through the crowd like shadows, carrying trays of canapes and $1,000 champagne. Camilla stepped into main hall quietly, balancing a crystal tray she had picked up at the entrance, unsure whether it was a test or a trap. Immediately, whispers rippled through the air. She was the only black woman in the room. At the center of it all, Victoria Hartwell, the formidable event organizer, caught sight of her. A tall woman with sharp cheekbones and an even sharper tongue, Victoria prided herself on keeping her events spotless. She narrowed her eyes and strode toward Camilla with the confidence of a queen about to discipline a servant. "You shouldn't even be here," she whispered harshly, her voice dripping with superiority. With a sharp gesture, she pushed the tray in Camilla's hands and nodded toward the swinging doors of the kitchen. "Someone like you can only serve at this kind of event, not attend it." The words sliced through the air like a blade. Guests nearby froze. Some gasped softly. Others quickly lowered their eyes to their drinks, unwilling to interfere. Camilla stood still, her face unreadable. "Sorry for confusion," she began calmly. "I just came to deliver this." Victoria cut her off with a dismissive wave. "We don't have time for stories. The kitchen is overwhelmed. You'll help with the dishes." Laughter erupted from a small group of elite guests standing behind Victoria. One of them, a woman draped in emerald silk, smirked and whispered loudly, "Finally, someone's putting the help in their place." The humiliation stung. The sting wasn't just in the words. It was in the silence that followed. The silence of dozens of powerful men and women who stood by. Too cowardly to object, too comfortable in their privilege to care. Camilla inhaled slowly, her back straightening as though absorbing the weight of the room. Then she smiled faintly, so faintly most didn't notice. "Of course," she said, and without another word, she turned and pushed open the swinging kitchen door. The kitchen was a stark contrast to the ballroom. Hot steam rose from massive sinks. The clatter of plates and the sharp hiss of boiling water filled the air. Workers, almost all black and Latino, moved quickly, their faces tired but resigned. Camilla slipped off her heels, rolled up the sleeves of her silk dress, and slid her hands into the sink. Fine china, plates that cost more than most people's monthly salaries, clinked softly as she began scrubbing. An older woman beside her, Maria, wiped glasses with a rag. She gave Camilla a sympathetic look. "Don't worry, dear," she whispered. "People like her have always been this way. She thinks we're invisible." Camilla glanced at her. There was no bitterness in her expression, only a quiet fire in her eyes. A confidence Maria couldn't quite understand. Outside, laughter erupted again. through the half-open kitchen door. Camila could hear Victoria's sharp voice echoing. "Some people just don't know their place in the world," she declared to a group of laughing guests. "It's our responsibility to educate them." The words hung in the air like smoke. Even in the kitchen, the workers fell silent, their shoulders stiffening. Camila, however, did not flinch. Her lips curled into the faintest smile, a smile that carried years of patience, a smile that hinted at a secret no one in that mansion yet knew. Because what Victoria Hartwell and every one of her smug, complicit guests didn't realize was this: the woman they had just humiliated was no ordinary servant. And before the night was over, their entire world would collapse around them. The kitchen air grew heavier as Camila scrubbed another fine china plate, the soap bubbles clinging stubbornly to her delicate hands. The sting of humiliation still lingered, but her movements were precise, calm, deliberate, like someone waiting for the right moment. Around her, the workers exchanged glances. They had seen countless women and men like Victoria Hartwell before, elites who treated the staff like furniture. But this woman, the one in the silk navy dress with quiet fire in her eyes, seemed different. Maria, the veteran glass dryer, leaned closer and whispered, "Most people would have run out crying by now. You don't look like someone used to bowing." Camila smiled faintly. "Let's just say I've been underestimated before." Maria tilted her head, studying her. There was something about Camila's tone that made her pause. It wasn't arrogance, it was certainty. Just then, the swinging doors burst open. Victoria Hartwell swept into the kitchen, her emerald gown trailing behind her like a queen's robe. And she wasn't alone. Flanking her were Robert Sterling, a barrel-chested real estate tycoon, and Patricia Westfield, the daughter of a pharmaceutical dynasty. They entered not out of necessity, but for entertainment. Well, Victoria sneered, folding her arms. "Look at her. Doesn't she scrub well? For someone who wanted to crash my event, she should be grateful I gave her a job tonight." Robert chuckled, his voice booming. "Victoria, you're too generous. In my company, someone like that wouldn't even make it past the interview stage." Patricia smirked and added, "And that's exactly what's wrong with this country. Too many chances for people who don't deserve them. They'll never rise above their station, no matter how hard they try." Their laughter filled the kitchen. The workers lowered their eyes, as if the insults had been hurled at them too. Maria tightened her grip on the glass. She was polishing, her knuckles white. But Camila kept scrubbing, her shoulders still and her face unreadable. Only her eyes betrayed her, flashing like steel behind calm water. Victoria moved closer, her voice rising so the staff could all hear. "You know what irritates me most? These people who try to infiltrate our world, pretending to be guests, pretending to belong, as if we can't see right through the act." Robert leaned in, smirking. "Probably came here hoping to catch the eye of some rich man, as if any of us would give her a second glance." Patricia laughed sharply. "Look at her hands. You can tell she's never held anything valuable. Plastic plates, maybe, but not this." She pointed at the platinum dish Camila was polishing. The room tensed. Even the dishwasher paused mid-cycle, his eyes flicking nervously to Camila. But instead of shrinking, Camila turned. Slowly, gracefully, she set the dish down, dried her hands with towel, and looked directly into Victoria's eyes. "Interesting perspective," she said, her voice soft but laced with quiet authority. "Especially considering that this gala is supposed to raise funds for underprivileged children. I wonder how they'd feel if they knew their benefactors saw people like me as beneath them." The words landed like a bomb. The kitchen fell silent. Even Maria froze, eyes wide. Victoria blinked rapidly, clearly caught off guard. "Excuse me?" Camila's posture shifted, no longer hunched over dishes but standing tall, shoulders squared, her calm gaze sweeping over the three elites. "I just find it ironic," she continued, her tone measured but razor sharp, "that you come here to sip champagne and congratulate yourselves on helping the less fortunate. Yet you can't muster the basic dignity to treat one person with respect." Robert's face reddened. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "That's completely different. Is it?" Camila cut in smoothly. Because to me, it sounds like exactly the same mentality. Charity from a pedestal. Pity without compassion. A desire to be seen as saviors while reinforcing the same inequalities you claim to fight against. A hush fell over the kitchen. The other workers had stopped moving altogether, captivated. Victoria stiffened, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to regain control. You're being very bold for someone in your position. My position? Camila tilted her head, her eyes locking onto Victoria's. What position would that be exactly? Victoria's lips parted, then closed again. For the first time all night, she struggled to find the right words. She had meant to say staff or servant, but suddenly the words felt dangerous, weighted. Camila took a single step closer. I'm curious, she said softly. Do you even know who owns this mansion? The question cut through the air like a knife. Victoria faltered, glancing nervously at Robert and Patricia. Of course, the Blackstone family. Everyone knows that. This estate has hosted our galas for years. Camila's lips curled into a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. Interesting. And when was the last time you spoke to them directly? Robert scoffed, trying to shake off the tension. We don't need to answer to you. You're here to work, not interrogate us. Camila leaned back slightly, her calm demeanor unshaken. Oh, I'm here to work. All right. But not in the way you think. Her words hung in the air, heavy and cryptic. Victoria's brow furrowed. For the first time, a chill ran down her spine. Something about the woman's presence, her tone, her poise, the way she commanded the room without raising her voice, felt wrong. Off. Dangerous. Who was this woman? Before she could press further, the muffled sound of footsteps echoed down the marble hallway. Slow, steady, deliberate. Maria's eyes widened. She had worked in the Blackstone estate for over 20 years. She recognized that stride instantly. Mr. Blackstone, she whispered to another worker, her voice trembling. He's coming. Camila's eyes flicked toward the door, then back to Victoria. Her faint smile widened just a touch. Perfect, she murmured. He's right on time. Victoria blinked, confused. What do you mean, right on time? Camila removed the apron from her waist, folding it neatly and placing it on the counter. She stood taller now, every inch of her radiating quiet authority. My job here, she said, her voice carrying through the silent kitchen, is just beginning. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, echoing off the marble floors like a drumbeat of fate. Each step carried weight, commanding silence. The kitchen workers exchanged nervous glances, whispering in hushed tones. Maria pressed a hand to her chest. It's him. I know that walk anywhere. Camila didn't flinch. She simply folded her hands neatly in front of her, her chin lifting ever so slightly. To the staff, she looked like a servant awaiting orders. But to Victoria, Robert, and Patricia, there was something unnervingly regal about the way she stood. Too calm, too composed, too powerful. Victoria tried to recover her authority, clapping her hands sharply. You, stay here and finish those dishes. Don't you dare embarrass me when the Blackstones arrive. Camila's lips curled into a faint smile. Embarrass you? Her voice was so soft it sent shivers down Victoria's spine. Before Victoria could retort, the heavy double doors swung open. Alexander Blackstone strode into the kitchen, tall, commanding, his presence filling the space like a sudden storm. His tailored suit was immaculate, but it wasn't the clothes that drew attention. It was the way he moved, with quiet authority, every step deliberate, every glance sharp. Where's my wife? His deep voice rolled through the room like thunder. The kitchen froze. Victoria blinked, her painted smile faltering. Wife? Patricia leaned closer to Robert, whispering nervously. He's never brought a wife here before. Robert's brows furrowed. Wait, surely he doesn't mean... Camila stepped forward, slowly, confidently. She removed the last trace of the apron she'd been forced to wear, setting it gently on the counter. Then, with steady hands, she brushed back a strand of hair and revealed a glittering diamond ring that caught the kitchen's harsh light. Actually, she said, her voice clear and calm, he did bring one. Every head turned. Gasps rippled through the staff. Maria's mouth fell open, her dish towel slipping from her hands. Victoria staggered back a step, her composure cracking. You what? This is impossible. Alexander's gaze softened the instant it landed on Camila. He crossed the kitchen in long strides, ignoring everyone else as though they didn't exist. When he reached her, his entire demeanor shifted. Camila, he murmured, his voice gentler now. David told me what happened. Are you all right? Camila's eyes held his. Calm. Steady. I'm fine, she said softly, her words carrying across the silent room. Though I must admit, it's been enlightening. Alexander reached for her hand, pressing it to his lips tenderly. To the stunned onlookers, the gesture was devastating. The humiliated dishwasher was no servant at all. She was the wife of one of Manhattan's most powerful men. The color drained from Victoria's face. Her throat worked as she tried to form words. Mr. Blackstone, this woman came uninvited. Alexander's eyes snapped to her, cold as steel. Uninvited? Into her own home. His voice cut like a blade. Victoria stammered. I didn't know she was your... Didn't know? Camila interjected smoothly, her tone deceptively soft. And tell me, Victoria, if you had known, would you have treated me with dignity then? The question struck like lightning. Victoria's lips parted, but no words came. Camila's gaze swept over Robert and Patricia. Both avoided her eyes, their arrogance evaporating. Robert tugged nervously at his cufflinks. Patricia fiddled with her diamond bracelet, her confidence replaced with unease. You see, Camila continued, her voice now strong, commanding, that's the problem. People like you believe respect should only be given to those with power. But dignity isn't conditional. It's not a privilege you hand out to the wealthy and strip from the poor. It is the basic right of every human being. The kitchen erupted into whispers. The staff, who had long endured humiliation in silence, now watched with wide eyes, their hearts swelling with something they hadn't felt in years. Hope. Victoria, pale and trembling, tried once more to regain control. This is a misunderstanding. A terrible mistake. If we'd known. Alexander raised a hand, silencing her. His eyes were fire now, his voice steady but deadly. You forced my wife, to wash dishes in her own home. You humiliated her, mocked her, belittled her in front of others. And you dare call it a mistake. The word mistake dripped with venom. Patricia's knees buckled slightly. We didn't realize. Exactly. Camila cut in, her tone razor sharp. You didn't realize. And that, Patricia, is the very core of the problem. You see a black woman in a dress and assume she doesn't belong. You see a face you deem unfamiliar and decide she's invisible. But tonight, she leaned forward, her eyes flashing. Tonight, I will make sure you never forget me. The silence that followed was suffocating. Behind Alexander, his assistant David stepped in, holding a sleek tablet. Sir, he said carefully, everything has been documented. From the moment she was turned away at the main entrance. Camila reached into her small clutch and pulled out her phone. With a swipe of her thumb, a recording began to play. The cruel laughter of Victoria, the mocking words of Robert, the sneering disdain of Patricia. Every sound was clear, undeniable. The staff gasped. Robert's jaw tightened. Patricia covered her mouth with trembling fingers. Victoria's eyes went wide with horror. You, Patricia whispered, pointing at Camila. You recorded this? Every word, Camila replied calmly. Alexander's lips curved into a cold smile. Good, because it's time the world sees exactly what the so-called pillars of society are really like. Victoria clutched at her gown, her voice desperate. Please, Mr. Blackstone. This will ruin us. We can fix this quietly. No one else has to know. Camila tilted her head, her voice laced with quiet power. But everyone will know. Every laugh, every insult, every word you said when you thought no one important was watching. Because people need to see the truth of who you really are. The staff, Maria especially, watched in awe. For years they had swallowed insults, endured humiliations, stayed silent. But tonight, someone stood for them. Not just stood, fought. And the humiliators? They were finally being exposed. The footsteps, the ring, the recording. It was all building to one unavoidable truth. The balance of power had shifted, and Victoria Hartwell, once queen of New York high society, was about to watch her empire crumble in real time. The kitchen seemed smaller now, suffocating with the weight of silence. Victoria Hartwell, Robert Sterling, and Patricia Westfield stood frozen, their confidence stripped away. Where once their words had flowed like venom, now their throats closed around fear. Alexander Blackstone didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His very presence radiated authority, and his next words landed like sledgehammers. "David," he said calmly, "begin making calls." "Yes, sir." David's fingers tapped rapidly on his tablet, preparing documents and dialing numbers. Victoria's painted smile cracked into desperation. "Alexander, please. This was just a misunderstanding. If you'd known. Camilla's voice sliced through hers, cold and sharp. She stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with her husband. "So, if you had realized I was the wife of Alexander Blackstone, then I would have deserved dignity? Then I would have been worth more than a dirty plate." Victoria faltered, her lips trembling. That's exactly what you meant," Camilla cut in, her tone calm but unyielding. "And that's exactly why every word you spat tonight will be heard by the world." Patricia's hand shook as she clutched her bracelet. "You can't. You wouldn't actually." Camilla tapped her phone screen. The cruel laughter and mocking words echoed again in the kitchen. Every racist sneer, every smug insult. It was all there, undeniable. The workers' faces shifted from fear to awe. For the first time in their careers, the untouchable elites were cornered. Alexander's eyes turned icy as he glanced at David. First call, the Blackstone Foundation. David nodded and dialed, putting the call on speaker for all to hear. "Yes, this is Janet from the Foundation," a crisp voice answered. "Janet," Alexander said smoothly, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "Effective immediately, withdraw all sponsorship from Hartwell events. Permanently." There was a pause. "Sir, that's 60% of their annual contracts." "I said permanently," Alexander repeated. "Yes, sir." The line clicked dead. Victoria gasped, her knees weakening. "Alexander, please, you can't." "Next," Alexander ordered. David dialed again. "Sterling Developers?" A voice answered. "This is Alexander Blackstone." He said evenly, "Cancel all pending contracts with Robert Sterling's firm. Effective tonight." Robert's face went pale. He stumbled forward. "Alexander, listen. We've worked together for years. This will ruin me." Alexander's eyes hardened. "You ruined yourself the moment you opened your mouth tonight." The call ended. Robert's hands trembled as sweat beaded on his forehead. "Next," Alexander commanded. David's fingers flew across the screen once more. "Westfield Pharmaceuticals. This is Alexander Blackstone. Effective immediately. Terminate all supply contracts with Westfield Pharmaceuticals across our hospitals and clinics." On the other end of the line, there was stunned silence. "Then understood, sir." Patricia's jaw dropped. Her lips quivered, but no words came. 3 calls. 3 lives dismantled in less than 5 minutes. The kitchen workers whispered in disbelief. Maria clutched a rag to her chest, her eyes wide. For 2 decades, she had watched these people crush others without consequence. Now, finally, she was witnessing the mighty fall. But Alexander wasn't finished. He turned back to Camilla. "May I see the recordings, my love?" Camilla handed him her phone. With a swipe, he forwarded them to David. "Send copies to the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, Society Watch, and every major local outlet," Alexander instructed. His voice was calm, almost casual, but it carried the weight of judgment. Patricia gasped, horrified. "No, you can't send that. Do you realize what this will do to us?" Camilla's eyes locked on hers. "Do you realize what you did to me?" To every worker in this kitchen, to every person you dismiss because of their skin color, their accent, their job, Victoria stumbled forward, tears welling. Please, Camila, I beg you, don't do this. I'll lose everything. Camila tilted her head, her smile cool. You already have. The difference is this time, the world will see why. Alexander slid his arm protectively around Camila's shoulders, but his gaze never softened toward the trio. Tonight, you taught my wife, and everyone here, how far you're willing to go when you think no one important is watching. Now it's time the world learns who you really are. Maria wiped her eyes, whispering, Finally, justice. The kitchen filled with murmurs of agreement from the other workers. Their shoulders seemed lighter, as though years of silent humiliation were being lifted all at once. Robert tried one last time, his voice shaking. Alexander, think about this. We're powerful people. This doesn't just affect us. It affects the entire network of elites you're part of. Are you sure you want to burn those bridges? Alexander turned slowly, his eyes burning with controlled rage. You're mistaken, Robert. You don't have power. You only had the illusion of it, built on fear, prejudice, and silence. And tonight, that illusion ends. The words landed like a verdict. Then, from the hallway, a camera light flashed. Someone had been filming. A guest, drawn by the commotion, had captured the confrontation. Within minutes, the footage was already spreading online. The kitchen workers realized it before the elites did. Their eyes lit up. It's going viral, whispered one. The world's going to see everything. Victoria's last shred of composure shattered. She fell to her knees, sobbing. Please don't let this destroy me. Camila stepped closer, her presence commanding. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of centuries of injustice. Destroy you, she said. No, Victoria, I'm not destroying you. You destroyed yourself the moment you decided my worth was less than yours. The finality of her words silenced the room. That night, by the time the gala's final champagne flute was emptied, the story had already broken. Headlines flooded across screens. Elites humiliate black woman at gala, only to learn she owned the mansion. Hartwell Sterling, Westfield exposed in racist scandal. Power couple Camila and Alexander Blackstone sparked national reckoning. The kitchen staff cheered as they huddled around phones, watching the clips spread like wildfire. But for Victoria, Robert, and Patricia, the nightmare had only begun. Their names were trending for all the wrong reasons. Calls from clients turned into cancellations. Sponsors fled. Their empires began crumbling before dawn. And all because, in their arrogance, they underestimated the wrong woman. By morning, the scandal had already exploded. The front page of the New York Times screamed, Socialite humiliates black woman at gala. Turns out she's the mansion's owner. CNN replayed the video clip on a loop, with pundits debating how centuries of prejudice still echoed through modern high society. On Twitter, hashtags like hashtag Justice for Camila and hashtag Know Your Place Backfired were trending worldwide. And on TikTok, young creators turned Victoria Hartwell's words into a meme. Some people don't know their place. Except now. The punchline was Camila's radiant smile as she revealed her diamond wedding ring. The humiliation Victoria had orchestrated to strengthen her status had become her undoing. Victoria woke to the sound of her phone, buzzing endlessly. At first, she thought it might be sponsors calling to check in, but as she swiped through the messages, her blood ran cold. Contract terminated. Effective immediately, our partnership ends. Due to recent events, we cannot be associated with Hartwell events. Within 72 hours, more than 90% of her contracts were gone. The Blackstone Foundation's withdrawal had sent shockwaves through the industry. Other sponsors fled to protect their own reputations. Even her longtime allies abandoned her. By the end of the week, Hartwell Events, a company she had built for 2 decades, was in ruins. Her penthouse apartment went on the market. Once a queen of New York society, Victoria now behind drawn curtains, terrified of paparazzi. Robert Sterling, the swaggering real estate mogul, suffered just as brutally. His recorded sneers about people like that weren't just offensive. They exposed a discriminatory mindset that raised legal questions about his company's hiring practices. News outlets dug deeper. Former employees stepped forward, sharing stories of racism, intimidation, and bias. Lawsuits piled up. International partners canceled multi-million-dollar projects. One night, Robert's daughter called him from London, her voice shaking. "Dad, my friends are sharing the video. They're laughing. I'm ashamed to use our last name." That broke him more than any contract cancellation. His empire wasn't just crumbling, it was shattering his family's legacy. For Patricia Westfield, the consequences hit even harder. Board members of her pharmaceutical company convened an emergency meeting. With public trust plummeting, investors demanded action. She was voted off the board. Overnight, she went from powerful heiress to disgraced outcast. Worse still, employees she had mistreated for years came forward. What had been whispered in office corridors was now shouted on the front page. A culture of systemic prejudice and elitism. For Patricia, the loss wasn't just financial. It was social exile. The glittering doors of New York's elite circles slammed shut forever. Meanwhile, Camilla and Alexander Blackstone became the faces of a movement. Her calm dignity in the face of cruelty inspired millions. Universities invited her to give speeches. Corporations sought her consulting firm, Williams Strategic Consulting, to rebuild their diversity and equity programs. One viral tweet captured the world's sentiment perfectly. They tried to make her wash dishes. Instead, she washed away their empires. Camilla didn't bask in vengeance. She redirected the spotlight. Together with Maria, the veteran staffer who accompanied her that night, she launched a foundation to empower service workers. They offered scholarships, training, and resources for people who had long been invisible in elite spaces. Maria, once a tired kitchen hand, now stood on stage beside Camilla, addressing audiences as a program director. Tears filled her eyes when she said, "For 20 years, I scrubbed glasses for people who never saw me. Camilla made sure the world finally did." Months later, Camilla stood at the podium of Harvard Business School, addressing a graduating class of future leaders. The hall was packed, her speech broadcast live. "True power," she told them, her voice steady and warm, "is not the ability to humiliate those beneath you. It is the courage to lift them up. The best revenge is not destroying your enemies. It's building a world where their cruelty has no place to thrive." The audience erupted into a standing ovation. Students wiped tears from their eyes. Professors nodded solemnly. The applause lasted nearly 5 minutes. Alexander, seated in the front row, watched his wife with quiet pride. She wasn't just his partner. She was becoming a symbol for change. One night, nearly 2 years later, Camilla received a letter. The envelope was trembling, the handwriting jagged. It was from Victoria Hartwell. "I ruined myself that night, but it wasn't just contracts or money I lost. I lost my humanity. I lost the ability to stand for something bigger than myself. I can never undo the harm I caused you, but I am sorry. Please tell me, can I ever repair what I broke?" Camilla read it quietly, then wrote a single sentence in reply. Reparation does not come through words, but through actions that lift others up as you once tried to tear them down. By then, Camilla's movement had spread far beyond New York. Restaurants, corporations, even schools were re-examining their policies. Workers shared their own hashtag Camilla Challenge stories online, moments where they had been dismissed, only to rise stronger. Victoria, Robert, and Patricia became cautionary tales. But Camilla became something greater, a beacon. And every time she was asked if she regretted the humiliation she had endured, she smiled softly and answered, "No, because sometimes the deepest injustice plants the seeds of the greatest change."